Hey everybody, it's Tim from Tadabase here, and this is Build It with Tim. On today's episode, we are going to start from scratch and we are going to learn how to import from a CSV to create new data tables inside of your application and how to utilize the import functions in general inside of Tadabase. For demonstration purposes, we are going to be talking about this company data spreadsheet that we have. We have 5 columns. Starting from the left, we have company name and then all sorts of company data that we want to track. Now, ideally, what I want to do is I want to make this spreadsheet into its own data table inside of the builder with a connection to a company where these company names are stored in another data table. In order to do that, the first thing I have to do is I need to actually do a little bit of pre-work by separating out all of the unique company names and storing them in a different spreadsheet. I'll import my company names first into its own data table, and then I can import the full sheet here and automatically make a connection to the company. I've made sure that I've gone ahead and I've exported these spreadsheets as a CSV. Once I have them in CSV format, I can hop over to the Tadabase builder and get started. Once I'm inside the builder, there's a couple different ways that I could get started actually creating data tables. The first one, of course, is to click the big button that says Add Data Table. This is going to allow us to define our table name, and then it's going to create an empty table in which we start to add fields. However, when we're working with existing data that we have inside of a CSV, we can use the special function here under this dropdown called Add Table from CSV. Clicking on Add Table to CSV will open up a new window where we can define our table name, and then it's going to ask you to select the CSV that you want to import. So I'm going to start with a list of my companies. We can define whether or not that CSV has headers on row 1, which in my case it does. We can leave the delimiter alone. If for some reason you have a different delimiter, then you can select it there. And then we'll choose Upload. Now it's going to ask us to map the fields in order to create new fields for each column within our CSV. I only have one column in this particular instance called Company Name, and I'll just simply make it a text field. Once I click Save, it's going to go ahead and import that CSV, create the field, and then import all of the records. The reason that we have to create our company data table first is because when we import the next section, which is the full spreadsheet or the full CSV, we need a company record to exist before we can actually make a connection to it. So the next step now that we have the companies table created is to do this process again. However, this time we're going to make a different table called company data. We can select our spreadsheet or a CSV and choose Upload once again. Now, when we are defining the field types that we want to include, we intend for company name to be a connection to the company in the company table. And we have that option through the importer window here. All the way at the bottom, you'll see we have the ability to set a connection based on the company name. So I'm going to create a connection field into the company's table, and we're going to connect to the company name. For the next 3 fields that we have, employee turnover rate, profit margin, and customer satisfaction, I don't intend for this to actually be a text field. Rather, I intend for it to be a select or a radio field. We can choose that in our field configuration dropdown. And what it's going to do is it's going to create an option inside that field for all of the possible values that are inside of our CSV. So if we have high, medium, and low all present inside of our CSV, we're going to create options inside that radio or select field with high, medium, or low. So I'll go ahead and choose radio for these 3 fields. And the date I can leave exactly as date. And once we're finished, you're going to see that we have a completed data table just like we did before. However, we have more information in this data table than the other one. And we also have valid connections that are automatically set because we imported our companies first. You can see how in just a few minutes, we can have a fully functioning data structure set up and created inside of our application, which allows us to jump right into the page builder to start adding pages to add and manipulate our data. So if we wanted to add a table to view all of our company data with a form to add new records, we can do that just this quickly and just this easily. And here's all of our data that we had just imported with our form that allows us to add new records. Now, the next step for this particular walkthrough is talking about how to import additional records into this particular table. Now that we have everything already set up and created, we can, of course, go back to the data builder and go into our table and choose the import option and redo the entire process, except this time we're not creating the table from scratch or creating fields. We're simply just importing and potentially matching values that we already have in order to update or create new records. However, maybe we want to give our users, our front end app users, the ability to do these imports themselves. Maybe you have more than one person on your team who's going to be responsible for doing these types of imports. We can use the same importing functionality inside the live published application rather than inside the builder. To do that, we're going to head back to our builder for a few moments and head to the automation tab. From here, we can choose import templates, add a new template. Now, what a template does is it's going to be a pre-mapped configuration telling Tadabase how the import should be handled. We can give this template a name, so we'll just call this company data. We'll select the data table that we want to import to, and then we can go ahead and map our fields. So for such a small data table that I have, I'm going to go ahead and choose add all fields. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the fields within our data table. On the right-hand side, you're going to see a space to enter the column names from your CSV. Now, it's incredibly important that the names you put on the right-hand side match exactly what are in your CSV. When we are defining the connection fields that we want to map out in this import, we need to be extra careful that we are selecting the right field from the connected table that we're going to be using a value from in our CSV. To be a little bit more clear, we know that in our CSV, we are storing the company name for each row from our company data CSV. When we are bringing in that data, we need to make sure that we are matching it to the company name inside the companies table and not any other company field. Okay, so we can't take a company name from our CSV and try to match it and set a connection to a company ID because the values are not the same. We're going to have to match what's in our CSV to what values we actually have inside of our application. So I'm going to leave this as company name. I know that my header is just called company name, so I'm going to change that there. After I've ensured that all of the other values on the right-hand column match exactly to the headers on my CSV, I can simply hit save, and now we have our import template created. From here, we can go back to the page builder and add this as a component inside of our page. We'll select the import component. Then we can choose the data table that we want to import to, and then we can select any available templates for that given data table. Now that we have that created, when we go back to our published application, you can see a big button at the top. We can now run through this whole import wizard directly through the published application. So if I import the CSV again, we're going to create an additional 150 records or so. What I can also do is I can go back to our builder, into the import component, and I can choose whether or not we want to match any existing fields with our CSV. When we choose a record value to match against with our CSV, what's going to happen through the import process is if that value does match, we are going to update the record. If the value does not match, then we're going to create a new one. Now, for example's sake, all I want to do is import a new batch of records, and I can simply click through this process, and we're going to start importing all of these brand new 51 records. And you can see our record count is going to increase to 201, and that import is now complete. So as you can see, the import process is super powerful and super functional inside of your Tadabase application. Whether you're using it to create your initial data tables and data structures, or you want to add an import component to the front end pages of your published application, you have a lot of options to choose from and a lot of power to take advantage of. So thanks so much for watching this week's episode. We'll see you next time. Take care.